Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we're glad that you're joining this session. It's on Arise in Practice, Country Leadership, Readiness, and Pathways to Resilience Investments. The focus of our session today is to think through how are we going to move forward with CIF support in our adaptation and resilience efforts. How do we build on our national adaptation plans, our NDCs, and any other support that we get across the globe regarding finance. We've been hearing a lot since we came, and especially yesterday we were in the field. We went to see the Green Legacy program, which the government of Ethiopia has been advancing. I hope we could relate to some of the resilience initiatives that are under nature-based solutions, how urban systems are reinforced to ensure that they're able to continue supplying water, to ensure that economies are thriving, to support jobs creation, and so on and so forth. Hope we can relate to that and see that across the systems, that is one of the things that we can potentially be looking at from the countries where we're coming from. So this session this morning is in two parts. I'm going to give a very quick overview of the Arise program, the expression of interest, which went live on Monday, and also the integrated results framework. And after that, we've got a great panel which will come to speak to some of the issues. And we ask that we're very interactive, so you colleagues should ask any questions or comments and anything to do with adaptation and resilience. So without making further ado, allow me to go into the presentation so that we have an idea for some of us that may not have been involved in the discussions around the Arise. So, okay. Yeah, this is much easier for me. So the program, this is our new Arise program, was launched on Monday by our CEO. We all heard the good news. But just to give a brief highlights on what is it about. We want to continue supporting developing countries to address urgent and growing climate risks through concession of finance and country-led programmatic approach. We've been hearing about this over and over again, and we hope that through the Arise, countries are going to achieve that. Now, we are coming from a background of pilot program for climate resilience. We learned a lot of things from that program. So we want to Arise to focus now on people, economies, ecosystems, and key sectors. Those key sectors that impact growth of our economies. And a stronger support to national planning and governance, and mobilizing public and private finance so that the scale of our investments beyond the catalytic finance that will come from the climate investment funds. And we also want to scale to translate our national adaptation plans. Several times it's been recorded that we failed to translate those plans into investable pipelines. So how do we use Arise to reach that to make sure the opportunities identified in the national adaptation plans are translated into investments? Or in our NDCs, how do we relate our NDCs to ensuring that our pipelines are aligned and are responding to that? And we do all these things because of the people. So if the people are not included, if it's not impacting their livelihoods, it's not changing their livelihoods, then we'll not see value of the investments that we see. Just to show how we plug into the national adaptation process, you will recognize that we've plugged into element B of the national adaptation process planning, where there's preparation and development, and also the implementation and integration, those two areas. So from the Arise activities, there's bankability of NAPs and high impact projects that can be supported. Then the MDBs, who are implementing entities, they work as a system to help you achieve the transformational intent of resilience investments. And And we want to deepen our risk analysis in economic and social systems so that we really see where in our sectors is climate risk impacting. Is it just so broad? Is it in health? So then productivity goes down. So, and what exactly is that impact? So that our investments are really going to be targeted. So you'll notice that Arise is across all the systems of our society. So economic systems, social systems, support systems, and ecological systems. We have got 3 components. The design document is online. It's part of the package of what we've shared with you. But just to highlight that there's component 1, component 2, and component 3. And when you go to the expression of interest, we're asking for 3. There are 3 core areas. So there's component 1, component 2, component 3. You're going to identify yourselves in one of those. We are all at different levels of adaptation investment planning. Others have got advanced investment plans. Others have just got NAPs. So you'll be able to identify where does the SIF resources really matter. Is it in just for us to come up with a framework with a policy, if the policy document or a policy framework that is going to help us unlock resources? Or do we need resources for actual investments? Because we've already done the analytics. So you need to define for yourself where you're at and plug into where it's most relevant and see if resources are going to be impactful. The theory of change. I'm sure these are very tiny, but it's just to ensure that when we're responding to the call for expression of interest, the Arise results, the impact results are important. You need to relate to what is there and nothing outside, because that is the core areas. My colleague Matthew is going to be one of the speakers, is going to speak more to this. So that continues, and one key feature you will notice in our integrated result framework is the issue of transformational change. So we need to be monitoring the signals of transformational change at every stage of implementation, from inception, once for those who will be successful countries on the program. Some of the examples, I'll not go into them because we've started a little bit late, but just for you to, this is not what you're saying you should invest in, these are just examples. Depending on your analytics, your analysis, and where you're at, and what is most impacted in your country, you will define where you require resources to go into. Now, the EOI process, which was launched on Monday, this determines which countries are going to be successful. It's highly competitive. Our resource envelope isn't that large. We continue mobilizing resources, but it helps us to determine, to identify the countries with potential, with very strong potential for transformational climate resilience. You will recall that for climate investment funds, in our mission statement, it's about transformational change. So those that show that strong signal are likely to be the countries that get the, amongst other criteria that we're asking for. And the eligibility is that you need to be an ODA country eligible, and we have an active program with at least one of the partner MDBs, and the other details are outlined there. And this is very important for us to know. So there are these 5 buckets: country, original context, government plans and commitment, and we've put details of what kind of information are we expecting in those areas. What should you tell us? What is happening? On the government plans and commitments, it's very important for countries to share the climate finance landscape in the country, because we all agree that there are projects, there are programs in adaptation and resilience currently going on. You've got commitments from JEF or GCF, Adaptation Fund. We need to know, where are those investments? So that, do you really need safe investment? Because if you're showing us the picture of your current investments or anticipated investments, where does the safe resources really come to plug in to unlock or to further deepen your kind of investments? Financial sustainability. This is coming from our main lessons that we learned from the pilot program for climate resilience. Once the project is closed, the MDBs move away. We usually found that there was no continuity in most of the cases. It's one of the big issues that we'll be looking out for. And you can see it's asking for 20 marks. So what are the plans? What is government thinking about to ensure there's financial sustainability to continue being invested into adaptation and resilience? Then, as mentioned, pick up to 2 core investment areas, highly interlinked, but let me mention that private sector and private capital mobilization is non-negotiable. Every kind of investment we do, how can we bring the private sector on board? How do we engage them? How can we unlock further resources for adaptation and resilience? Social inclusion, stakeholder engagement, gender, and just transition are key elements we want to see in the expressions of interest once they come in. So I will not speak more. I just thought I should highlight there. We will dive deeper as the conversation goes on later today. And the key feature there is the expression of interest, the core is already out. As at Monday, it's live. And the deadline is June 8, which is 6 weeks from now. And all EOIs to be submitted must be signed off by the Ministry of Finance or Central Planning Ministry. Those are very important. For those that will be doing regional programs, ensure that the participating countries do submit consenting and supporting that they're part and parcel of that expression of interest. Just a little bit, so the June, what's going to happen between now and June is that colleagues will be working on your expression of interest. We're going to run a clinic on May 13 and 14 to give opportunity to countries to ask questions where they may need questions or clarity regarding the expressions of interest. And the deadline for submission is June 8. We're going to have an independent expert group in place. And we hope to have a decision of the successful countries adopted or approved by our board by September, October, or later this year, with a possible announcement of the successful countries at the COP. With that, allow me to call upon our panel this morning, and 2 of them are virtually online, but I'll start with Dunstan, who's here. You can encourage him by clapping. So Dunstan is coming from the Climate Finance Center in Kyrgyzstan Republic. Then we have Matthew Harris, who is our acting head for risk management, monitoring, and reporting from the Climate Investment Funds. And we have in-house also Daniel from the Dominica, the Commonwealth of Dominica. Sorry, I was almost saying that Dominican Republic, but that's a different country. And we also have Algo Roy from Asian Development Bank. He's Director for Climate Change. He's joining us online. And Chibesa Penslos Malawi, who's coming from the Commonwealth Secretariat Hub in Mauritius, if I got that one right. So, now I can sit down. Thank you so much for joining us today. As mentioned earlier, we're going to have 2 segments of questions, but I do recognize that Ago has a tight stop line, so we're likely to ask Ago to go first in most of the questions, and to also ask colleagues to ask him any questions while we still have his valuable time with us here. So with that, allow me to turn to Ago straight away and find out from him. Climate adaptation investment plans do help countries structure their adaptation priorities. How do you ensure that structure is designed from the start as a program, not just a collection of projects, so that it can serve as a credible entry point into ARISE And at what stage do you start identifying which investments could realistically attract private capital?
Thank you, Chitambo. Can you just confirm you can hear me?
Pardon?
Can you confirm you can hear me?
Yes, very well, thanks.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry I'm not there in person. And you have to see my, in the big screen, that's quite scary to see myself there, actually. Sorry for that. Okay. First of all, congratulations to the SIF team for getting the SIF EOIs published. It's great. We already have received quite a bit of interest from countries in Asia Pacific to explore it. Going back to your question, Chitembo, I think if you want to make sure that a country's adaptation investment plan is not about a list of projects, but a program, there are a few things we have to keep in mind from the very beginning. One is the adaptation investment plan and the planning process, which is equally important, should not be seen as an isolated activity. It has to be part and parcel of government's wider planning processes, including ensuring it's embedded or closely linked with medium-term planning process, expenditure frameworks, and annual budgeting cycle. So that's very important to begin with, which means ministries of finance have to play a very important role in this. The second point being, of course, adaptation needs are very big, and every sector needs adaptation support. But a country might have prioritized specific sectors like water or health or agriculture. Now, if you want to have an adaptation investment plan in these sectors, it's very important that the plan is closely aligned with the sector's investment plan. And every sector has certain metrics or KPIs in place, and the adaptation investment plan should be able to demonstrate how it helps a sector achieve their own sectoral KPIs. And that's very important from a long-term sustainability point of view. The third point from my angle, which is based on experience in different countries, is that a national adaptation plan may identify broad areas of priority, like climate smart agriculture. But it is the task of the adaptation investment plan to further unpack these priorities. For example, climate smart agriculture may need support in improving extension services, access to technology, access to finance, irrigation infrastructure. So a whole bunch of things are required to make climate smart agriculture happen, as an example. The investment plan should be able to package these, or bundle these investment ideas under larger packages, depending on what is the outcome you want to achieve. And this bundling is important because, technically speaking, you will see different sources of financing are appropriate for different bundles, usually. Like work on extension services might require mainly public finance to begin with, whereas the work on technology can explore other sorts of financing. For me, the fourth point to keep in mind that at the end of the day, if you want a long-term program, then for each of these investment ideas, it's important to articulate what are the benefits, both in economic terms and where possible in financial terms. I mean, based again on our experience, the economic terms is easy to articulate. The financial terms is difficult in many cases for adaptation projects, depending on the sector and the country. And lastly, if you really want a programmatic approach, this means that only one type of financing whether it's grant financing or loan financing or project financing, will not be enough. You have to use different instruments, but also different modalities to deploy those instruments, which requires starting from technical assistance to more diagnostics works, to potentially policy reforms, to working through financial intermediary lending, to FILs and banking sector, and at the end of the day, also some project financing. All of this is required if you want to really move this as a program. So for me, these 5 important points about it being a planning process, at the end of the day, aligned closely with the sectoral KPIs, looking at investment packages, articulating the benefits, and adapting a range of financial instruments and modalities would be really critical to make the shift from a list of adaptation projects to a program of adaptation projects that's aligned with the country's NAPs and NDCs. I'll stop here. Thank you.
I'll go for unpacking it for us, very clearly articulated that, and we still see country leadership in there because we still need to integrate in financial systems, country-led, in the plans to ensure that it's aligned to KPIs of the system that we want to invest in, and unpacking the NAPs. He's really clearly outlined that for us, and we hope we're all picking something from there. And I like the fact that how do we actualize this? We need to look at the different financial instruments. And that's very important for us to think about financial sustainability and viability of the investments that we need to do. Allow me to turn to Matthew Harris. Arise takes a programmatic approach to adaptation investments, and Algo has touched on those areas a little bit. But what does it take in practice for a country, and how can countries use the expression of interest process to show that the existing country platform is already generating the kind of pipeline that a programmatic approach can build on?
Thank you very much, Chitembo. First of all, it's a privilege to be here today, especially after our CEO at SIF has officially launched the Arise program after many years. And I'd be remiss to not first acknowledge the efforts of Chitembo, our lead, but also Argo, my co-panelist, as well as the many countries who are involved in consultations for the development of this program. So for SIF, we have about 18 years of experience now with the programmatic approach of investment planning. And from our perspective, we see this in many ways as a kind of precursor or a demonstrated model for country platforms. We talk a lot, it can sound jargonistic, but the fundamentals are really quite simple of what's the programmatic approach. First of all, countries should be in charge they should take a leading role in the planning, supported by multilateral development banks, supported by climate financiers and funds like the SIF. Second of all, really critical to have a central coordinating ministry with convening power, and to bring not only different ministries and stakeholders within government, but beyond government as well, civil society and other actors, to co-create a unified vision in the investment plan and with strong interministerial and societal cooperation. And then I think finally, on a sort of more practical level, what does an investment plan really look like or mean? It means there's multiple projects and they're connected synergistically into the larger policy vision and architecture of the country. They should be working together in some way and complementary toward a larger, higher level objective. So in SIF, we're concluding our first pilot program for climate resilience, which has been $1 billion in SIF financing, nearly $3 billion additional in expected co-financing. A recent evaluation has shown that it's benefited more than 65 million people, and also demonstrated that if implemented effectively, the programmatic approach really can lead to transformational outcomes. But what does this mean now for Arise? Because we know that the policy landscape has evolved. It's different. We're no longer piloting. We're in a new moment. Countries are at different stages, but there's many NAPs, NDCs, national development strategies that have evolved. And we've really designed the Arise EOI process, as well explained by Chitembo in the earlier presentation, to meet the moment, to build on the lessons for PPCR, but also to have that flexibility for countries to come in at the appropriate stage. And just through a quick review this morning again of the criteria, I think it's really quite clear how countries that do have platforms are already in very good positioning to do well in the EUI process, given that some of the criteria are high-level government commitment, alignment with NAPs and national fiscal budget frameworks, complementarity and alignment with other adaptation financiers. A platform kind of already moves a country in that direction, so it's a natural fit in that sense. But just to close my points on this, I think for countries that do not have a platform as well in place, that doesn't mean you should not apply, indeed. And there's also the opportunity to consider regional level approaches, as Chitambo explained, as well, to fit into the EUI process. Thanks.
Thanks, Matthew. I'll not go over what is already well explained. I might spoil the very good response. Let me turn to our country representatives. Who's going to start? Dunstan or Daniel? The two Ds. How has your national adaptation platform, including your NAP and NDC processes, shaped the priorities you would bring to ARISE? That is, if your countries are interested to start with. And do you see ARISE as a natural next step from the groundwork your country has already undertaken?
Yes. First of all, thank you, Chitambo, for the invitation to address this panel today. And it really is a pleasure to be here. I want to give a little context first, if that's fine. I'll be brief. I'm coming from the Commonwealth of Dominica, which is a very small country within the Caribbean. I would not be offended if nobody's heard of it, but we're a very small country of about 70,000 people. In 2017, we experienced a Tropical 5 hurricane that did over 200% of damage to our GDP. I give that context because the question as to whether or not how our policies have been shaped by our experiences is very critical to us. When not long after that hurricane, we decided, we made a bold step to say we were going to become the world's first climate resilient country. So in that step, we created what we call the NRDS, which is a National Resilience Development Plan, strategy, sorry. And that has been the foundation for a lot of the work we've done, including the unit that I'm coordinating, which is the Climate Resilience Execution Unit. And I really want to touch on what Matthew mentioned, that because of past experiences, the ARISE was a natural fit for us. The PPCR and the DVRP helped us with risk data assessments, early warning systems, resilient infrastructure, and it really is a natural fit. And I think strategically, we're in very much alignment with it. Obviously, now that we have the EOI at our disposal, it will take some time to figure out how we're going to fit in, but from a country perspective, it's a natural fit.
So, first of all, I would like to also thanks for the Kyiv and ESIF and Ethiopian government for the organizing such important event. And then, of course, very much glad to see a lot of friends from different countries, from multilateral development banks and then development partners. First of all, I would like to start with a brief context. As our colleagues already described, Kyrgyzstan also landlocked, that mountainous country. With, I already explained that 94% of our territory is considered as a mountain. So how its climate change effect on it, of course, and with glaciers melting, with some estimation that by 2015, up to 50% of the glaciers might be melt. So that kind of extreme cases are there. And of course, more than 90%, exact 93% of our electricity generated by the water resources, which is directly dependent on level of glaciers and mountain ecosystem. And then, of course, another context is Kyrgyzstan in global scale emit only 3.03% of GHG. But meantime, of course, we suffer a lot. In some estimation that in our part of the world, that impact of climate change is twice its global average. So that's a basic average, basic context for the discussion. Based on it, of course, Kyrgyzstan also lately developed several strategic policy documents, which can be perfectly fit or serve as a basis for the ARISE. First, of course, is every country NDC 3, then carbon neutrality by 2050. Then we now under the final approval climate investment plan. I will touch on later on it. And then national adaptation plan. By the way, we adopted TNA, technology need assessment, which comprised two areas, mitigation and adaptation. That also adaptation part might be surface basic for the ARISE as well. And based on it, I would like to talk briefly about our institution, because Climate Finance Center exactly 8 years ago was established with the support of CIF, particularly with the PPCR program. That the main goal is to coordinate activities related to climate finance and then, of course, advance. And currently, we serve as a secretariat, for example, for the Coordination Council on Climate Change, Environment, and Green Economy, which chaired by the Prime Minister of Kyrgyzstan. So we currently under the Prime Minister, helping to coordinate all the climate finance related activities, including mitigation and adaptation throughout the government agencies, and of course in particularly participation with private sector as well. So that's the background regarding the Kyrgyzstan interest on ARISE program. So certainly taking into account our current condition, we would like to be part of this process, and then mountain ecosystem might be the potential area to focus on, but we are not ruling out any other sector. For example, our national adaptation plan priorities 6 sectors: water resources, agriculture, energy, health, disaster risk management, and ecosystem conservation. So that's priority areas depending on NAP. And then, of course, we would like to be part of this first, that kind of wave of ARISE countries, successful ARISE countries. And we suggest to CFC serve as a model or platform in which a RISE program will be implemented and further developed jointly with MDBs. That is our suggestion. And then, of course, based on our capacity, we would like to actively involve in project proposal development as well. And later stage, when it's applicable regarding capacity building areas, we would like to be part of actively upcoming project idea as well. I will stop here, and then in later stage, I will touch on climate investment plan more details. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to both of you, touching on institutional strengthening, already set up platforms, analytics undertaken, and clear areas of possible investments. And Dunstan, you've spoken about capacity building and areas of support. Allow me to now shift that then very squarely to Chibesa, who's coming from the Commonwealth Climate Finance Hub to speak on how you strengthen capacity gaps. What is common is shared by the countries from developing countries, and the ability to structure and manage programmatic adaptation investment programs. And how can we collaborate with your institution through ARISE and also MDBs in a manner that will support countries more on capacity enhancement and in other ways, especially for pipeline development?
Thank you, Chitembo, for those questions, and good morning, colleagues. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes, very well, thanks.
Thank you. So before I answer your questions, please allow me to take just 1 minute to introduce the organization I represent a bit more clearly. I hope you're aware, dear colleagues, that the Commonwealth of Nations is a voluntary association of 56 countries that fosters democratic, economic, and environmental resilience. And I hope you're also aware that for the past 10 years, the Commonwealth Secretariat, that is headquartered in London, has been operating the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub, which is hosted by the government of Mauritius. And that's where I am this morning. And unfortunately, I was unable to travel to be with you, but very grateful to still be able to join you remotely. So I'm the Regional Climate Finance Advisor for Africa at the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub. And we exist to support Commonwealth countries, but primarily SIDS and LDCs, to access more climate finance, both public and private. And we do that primarily by deploying national, regional, as well as thematic advisors into government ministries in Commonwealth countries. Now, to talk about some of the challenges that we've observed in working with Commonwealth countries when it comes to structuring adaptation projects into investment programs, Firstly, that prioritization and sequencing of investments is really challenging when all the needs in a country are urgent and pressing. For the countries that we serve, for SIDS and LDCs, it can be quite a challenge to decide on how to prioritize and how to sequence investments when almost every area, every sector that you consider has deep and pressing needs. So there's a tendency to throw out, individual projects for each sector and hope to catch whatever funding lands. And as Agya has already explained, we still have a challenge in that adaptation is not fully integrated into development planning in many countries. And so adaptation still, tends to be addressed through standalone projects rather than coherent programs. Also, a programmatic approach requires ongoing multi-sectoral collaboration, which some governments may lack the resources, both in terms of time and money, maybe also in terms of personnel, to sustain in the long term. And we need to recognize that climate finance access is becoming increasingly competitive. The funds have to compete for resources. The accredited entities are competing for resources. The countries are also competing for resources. And as human beings, both at a personal level and at a collective level, we respond differently to competition. Some will go all out, do whatever it takes to prepare themselves to win. Others become overwhelmed and step back. And coupled with that is the complexity, with each new fund or each new program bringing new processes, rules, and templates to learn. Now, coming back to the area or the issue on collaboration, which is the second part of your question, Chitembo, how can we as a structured team of climate finance experts collaborate with the CIFs around ARISE? I think how we can work together is that because we are an existing team of climate finance experts deployed globally, it's not too much of a stretch for us to learn the ARISE processes, templates, expectations in detail so that we can communicate them within the governments where we are serving. And then we can also help those governments we serve to develop their expressions of interest. So we would use our relationships also with the MDBs to expedite this development process of the EOIs, hoping that, with that partnership with the CIFs and the banks, we can get all of our countries that we are supporting to put forward the expression of interest in time and in the manner that would be welcomed by the CIF. So what makes this possible for us is that we already have national project pipelines within the countries that we are serving across Africa, the Caribbean, and the Indo-Pacific region. And so supporting the governments to structure these pipeline projects into well-integrated adaptation investment programs is something that we see ourselves capable of doing. And so we look forward to this partnership with the CIFs and the MDBs. Thanks, and back to you.
Thank you so much, Teresa. So for some of us who might have been having challenges to say the expression of interest could be complex, so there's the offer from the Commonwealth Climate Finance Hub, just for Commonwealth countries, unfortunately. But the MDBs are for everyone, so we still have the MDBs to work with us. I just want to pause a little bit and turn to our audience. At this point, we've heard from this great panel, we've heard the presentation, and we might have our own questions or reflections on what has been shared. Under 5 minutes to you, the audience, any clarifications, any questions you might have. Could we please have a mic in the room?
Hello, my name is Shimal, and thank you for this informative panel. I'm a CIF fellow with IFC. So my question is, I am thinking from the perspective of a country representative. As Chitembo said, you know that climate adaptation, resilience, and mitigation intersects and cross-cuts other sectors and other CIF programs, let's put it that way. What makes ARISE different from other CIF programs? And for example, if I'm a country representative trying to establish this pipeline for expression of interest, how should I distinguish my pipeline from other CIF programs that I applied for so that my country can gain a competitive advantage? And the second thing, or maybe I will ask this later on about sustainable finance products. In the industry decarbonization program, CIF introduced this new criteria that at least 50% of the financing should go to private sector. And you also touched upon sustainable finance products, as we know that right now, and I'm working with sustainable finance team, that's why it's a personal curiosity anyway. We are seeing the rise of green loans, bonds, SLLs, and in Muslim countries, green shukuks. So my question is, does CIF plan on any criteria introducing the sustainable finance mechanisms into their lending? Right now, it's a concessional finance, but to my knowledge, MDBs can give this as a traditional loans and not necessarily there's a criteria for sustainable finance mechanisms. So do you plan on introducing a new criteria on that? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Oh, it's me, yeah? Thank you so much. My name is Zarihun. I am from Ministry of Finance of Ethiopia. So thank you to CIF for launching this new, I would say, initiative. So I was involved in the PPCR when the PPCR was started back in the day. We presented even our PPCR at the CIF in 2017. So back then, I think the proposal or the investment plan was technically approved, but CIF didn't have resource. CIF went, ran out of resource, so we didn't receive any support from CIF, even if our project proposal was technically approved by the committee back then. So, this new initiative also creates expectation and also competition among different countries, stakeholders, and so on. It's really important you mentioned the link, the lessons from the PPCR, the evaluation, and so on. So how that has informed this ARISE in terms of, personally, I don't know the resource envelope. I heard some allocation or maximum per country or per project, and so on. So it will be good to know just from CIF side a little bit in terms of how this is going to be. You have to be realistic, and it's also important to avoid a situation where expectation is created, but at the end of the day, no resource, because the competition is going to be tough. Of course, you have your own criteria, as you mentioned. I think in your earlier introductory presentation, you said up to 2 ARISE core investment areas with weighted score of 30. So what does that really mean? If a country chooses to come up with 1, does that mean that I know that up to 2 means 1 is also possible, but is it the same in terms of the number of projects that a country intends to put or to submit to CIF? Thank you.
Can I just allow one more question, and please be very, very brief because we're running out of time, but we'll still have another Q&A afterwards.
Thank you. My name is John Damaja. I come from Rwanda and I work for Rwanda Green Fund. My question is straightforward. Under ARISE, is it okay to expand the existing approved investment plan for countries that have already received funding from the CIF while implementing a larger program that we have in the country. That we are already working with an MDP. Thank you so much.
I was hoping you are going to get questions to the panel. I'm going to ask, I'll go to put you on the spot for the first question, if you don't mind, which was on sustainable finance mechanisms, if that's a criteria that the CIF is going to come up with. Algo has been working on it was first CRP, then it was rebranded to Arise. So it has a lot of background on how this is progressing and why we're focusing on financial sustainability. And then I'll pick on the resource envelope and expectations. I'll speak to that at the close of this session. And for Luanda's question is, can we work on an existing investment plan? It's context specific, and if it's an industry decarbonization, I don't think so. Maybe if it's nature, people, and climate program. When you go through the expression of interest criteria and the guidance therein, it should help try to respond to your question. And that's why it's very important that on the 13th and 14th of May, we'll be having that clinic to go through some of those questions and what does that mean? What does it entail for the government? I'll go over to you.
Thank you so much. So, I think we should see Arise as an opportunity, not just to advance, discrete projects that a country has, but can a country use these resources in a more strategic manner that can help the country either mobilize or unlock further financing that's very much needed for adaptation. So in that context, if a country has a sustainable finance framework and you want to pursue the use of instruments like sustainability linked loans or resilience bonds, etc., I think that Arise should promote that, of course, depending on the country context and what the country has prioritized. That would be my straight answer. And maybe very briefly, lastly, and connected to some other question that came up, I really think that the Arise is not trying to start things from scratch. Countries already have done that, and they should be recognized very much, and we should be building on that. But making sure the resources from the Arise is really, really used in the most strategic manner so that you are able to maximize the impacts of those resources. So if you have established a country platform, let's use the Arise resources to build on that, right? So please don't see the investment planning of Arise as only for Arise. Take the opportunity to do more investment planning for adaptation in your country, and that investment plan, use it to raise money from different donors and financing partners as appropriate, including through Arise. I'll stop here. Thanks, Chidembo.
Oh, and since you are already with a mic, could you share with us, since Asian Development Bank has really supported countries to develop climate adaptation investment plans over the past few years, what are some of the things that you'd want to share about how to structure the programmatic financing for those investment plans? What processes, what have you observed that has worked well? What is it that you could share with the audience this morning on how they could learn from there and reflect that in this particular program?
Thank you. I'll keep it very short. So I think we have been supporting around 15 countries with adaptation investment plan. The first point is we have used the existing countries' plans, whether it's a national adaptation plan or NDC or whatever plan they have, as the starting point, because that's very important to start from a country-driven and country-led plan. but also important to make sure that particular plan is linked very closely with sectors and the financial planning processes. That's the first point. So these plans already exist in the country. I think the value addition that we potentially brought in was to ensure, as colleague from Commonwealth Association was talking about, ensure you take the plan, but you go through a robust process of prioritization and sequencing, which is very important for adaptation because you don't want to make wrong investments and lock in risks, actually. So that was very important. But in that context, help a country identify for what kind of adaptation project, what type of financing is most appropriate. And that is very, very important because once you do that exercise, automatically you start by thinking if a project is financially viable, ideally a domestic private sector should be financing it. If it's not viable, can a country undertake policy reforms that can actually incentivize the private sector to come in? Even if that's not possible, then do we need blended finance from mechanisms like SIF, for example, to come in and de-risk the investment? If even that is not possible, then you go towards public financing for that particular investment. So if you go through this kind of a logical framework of trying to find what's actually feasible, I think you will come up with a list of projects which automatically is lending towards different kind of financial sources. That's something MDBs can help do because we are used to doing that kind of work in the country. My last point is, as I mentioned, so as a part of doing this work, what we have really taken aback is at the end of the day, the investment plan has to be a country's investment plan, not for one particular program or not for one particular donor or financing agency. They should be able to use that investment plan to go to different financing partners as appropriate and request or mobilize money for the same plan. So my suggestion would be please use ARISE as an opportunity to build that system in your country so it not only benefit from SIF resources, but also our MDB's regular resources or other any vertical climate funds and other bilateral partners that you may be able to mobilize. I'll stop here today, but thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Algo. And that makes me able to move to our country partners here, having elaborated on how the investment planning process would help countries to prioritize and sequence. So in that regard, how do you see the entry points from where you're at, and how could you prioritize where you would want to invest, and how, probably if possible, if not possible, it's fine, how the private sector engagement in adaptation could be facilitated? Daniel?
Yeah, the idea of moving from program to program mindset, being very programmatic, I think that is something in our country we're really trying to tackle because I embrace the idea of doing a multi-year adaptation plan, that seems to be a lot more functional. Right now, we're trying to engage in green industrial development, specifically with renewable energy. To do that, we very much in alignment with what's been said, we had to engage with the idea of engaging the private sector, which means we need a national financing vehicle. Without that, you're pretty much continuing the same thing we've done in the past. Program to program, project to project, yielding results, but not having a full-blown multi-year plan. Engaging the private sector is difficult because obviously their bottom line is profit, and if there's an investment opportunity that requires too much capital investment on their part without seeing the long-term benefits, they back out. They're not so interested in doing that. So it was very important for us when we decided to engage in green industrial development that we made sure that we wanted the private sector to feel comfortable to engage with the government in green industrial development. If we continue to just do projects without having that level of national financing, that we engage in different forms. We mentioned green bonds. That's something that Dominic is interested in looking at. Right now, there are a lot of different opportunities. Though we understand that climate investment across the world that well is running dry, we also understand that we need to be a little more strategic in the way we do it. So whatever is remaining, we need to be able to access it. Again, one of the questions you asked was what our priority areas are, and that's definitely green industrial development. I'll just give a brief overview of what we're doing currently. We are currently doing, I think by about midway this year, we're going to launch our first geothermal plant in the country that's going to provide about 10 megawatts to the country, which is just an initial start, but it's one of the first in the region. And that is going to be able to get us more energy dependence. More energy dependence means more investment in development and industry. We can look at things like shore power, providing energy to cruise ships, doing different things like green hydrogen production. And that is going to put our country in a place where it's never been before, to be able to actually develop and industrialize. We are countries in the small island states that are largely agricultural and tourist-based. So that's why a priority area has to be renewable energy and industrial development. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask to share with my slides in the screen? First slide now. First one. Yeah, no, first one, please. Do you have previous one? First one, if it's possible. First one, yeah. Yes, this one. Before going to screen, I would like to reflect on very important question, friends from Turkey. So, of course, it's $1 million question. Very important, because exactly we are now here and learning exactly when we have clear answer for those questions, hopefully, by the COP31, which will host in Antalya, November, we will be able to join those successful countries from different countries. And we hope that we will meet each other in COP31 and we celebrate all the successful cases from our countries, our region as well. So it is our reflection. We will work on it, for certainly. So what is Kyrgyzstan is proposing for now? In order to be successful on this case. You can see in the screen, currently Climate Finance Center is a coordinating mechanism developed, as our presenter mentioned, quite a comprehensive climate investment plan till 2030, which reflect public sector, private sector participation, as well as key performance KPIs on it. Currently, from public sector, we are anticipating to include 26 projects in different sectors. Can you move to second slide, please? So 26 projects from different sectors. And those sectors are aligned in different areas. Energy efficiency, low carbon, waste management, forestry, when it comes to mitigation. When it comes to adaptation, it's water management, agriculture, disaster risk management, and climate resilient cities. And then very important, our colleagues already mentioned, among those 26 project ideas, 15 of them is national projects, 8 of them technical assistant, diversification, and 3 of them is regional projects. So we align diverse set of project ideas. And then, of course, one important area is that participation of private sector. As you can see that from finance sources, we expect that very active involvement, multilateral development banks like AGB, World Bank, EBRD, so on. Then from climate fund perspective, of course, we expect very important climate investment fund, GCF, GF adaptation fund. Certainly those projects are aligned with those priority areas. When it comes to private sector, you can see that our main focus would be green lending market for the commercial banks, and then of course green bond insurance. I would like to share with very important news. Just recently, 10 days ago, CIF adopted one green adaptation finance related project for Kyrgyzstan led by AGB. And then we are very happy to implement it as a pilot project because particularly when it comes to private sector and commercial bank or banking sector, adaptation is left behind. And this particular case will showcase or to advance private sector involvement and commercial banks on advancing adaptation finance in Kyrgyzstan as well. So overall, this is our idea, and then hopefully using a RISE platform up to 2030. Can you back to first slide, please? Up to 30, we are aiming to overall to mobilize up to 1 billion USD as a catalytic source using those project ideas. And of course, to develop more than 30 pipeline projects. Can you back to first slide, please? And then of course, ultimately, to reduce GHG emission, maybe up to 1 million ton in Kyrgyzstan. That's the main objective, and hopefully through ERISE and then using this already existing platform, we can successfully implement our joint action in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to both of you. Very well articulated. We're running out of time, so I won't go over that. Shiresa, can I turn to you? You already shared with us how you work with countries and how you are likely to help them have access to ARISE financing. But probably in under 2 minutes, what do you think would accelerate their ability to attract private finance into the adaptation investment programs?
Thank you, Chitembo, for that question. I think we are aware that attracting private finance for adaptation remains a challenge, but we know from experience that certain sectors, I would say in particular water and agriculture, have the potential to attract private finance for adaptation and resilience. We know that the return and risk profiles there can be expressed quite clearly. So in terms of what we think we should be doing to accelerate countries' ability to attract private finance into their adaptation investment programs is supporting, first of all, an improved understanding of the league that we're playing in, right? So I tried to think of ways to explain this, to illustrate it in some way. If I were running a community football team, it would be a little over ambitious of me to invite the top team in the Premier League to play with us and actually expect them to show up. But that's something we tend to do in climate finance. We in the SIDS and LDCs tend to have quite small adaptation programs on a relative scale. But then we pursue the largest international financiers and we get disappointed and frustrated when they're not interested. I think what we need to do is to support an improved understanding of the private sector so that we're able to target our investments or our pipelines more effectively towards financiers who are interested in the type and the scale of projects that we are developing. Secondly, this is where a programmatic approach is indeed very helpful, because once we've structured these quite small and discrete adaptation projects into well-prioritized and sequenced programs, that gives us a bigger bulk, right? A bigger pie to put on the plate of potential investors to get them interested. Now, to build that understanding of the playing field, we need to bring specialists with a private sector background into our public institutions. And that would help to ensure greater alignment in the way that we think and the way that we design projects and programs. And that is something that we, as the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub, are pursuing through our embedded advisor model. And so finally, to wrap up, Chitembo, I really must commend you and the whole SIF team, because projects or programs such as ARISE create a very clear incentive for countries to develop or update and strengthen their adaptation investment programs. So we're taking the NAPS into the implementation phase, and it's great that SIF is taking the lead on this, and we stand ready to support you actively to ensure that countries are able to secure both public and private finance in increasing amounts for adaptation. Thanks, and back to you.
Sir? And we want to run quickly to Matthew. This is the last question, Matthew. Don't look at me like that. So much has been spoken about how we can attract private sector, what are the priorities, what are the financial structuring we need, everything. But even if we do all that, if our results framework, if we're not monitoring and we're not reporting on our progress, I just want to hear from you how the integrated results framework would connect with the monitoring and reporting, and we can wrap it up from there.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Chitembo. I'll try to be brief and just as a preview because we'll go in more detail in the next session. Chitembo did share already a kind of preview as well of the integrated results framework for ARISE. I think this is something that we are quite proud of in SIF because what we've done is taken kind of traditional frameworks of monitoring, as many of you might be familiar, the indicators, but we've combined it and deepened it together with a kind of deeper evaluation and learning perspective around transformational change, kind of integrated gender and social inclusion throughout, just transition, SDG alignment. But I think particularly important for this crowd is that we actually have also designed it in such a way to be quite flexible and to fit into the existing country monitoring and evaluation systems. So rather than trying to be too prescriptive and assigning kind of indicator 1, 2, 3, 4, which historically has been a trend from different organizations, different donors, we have thematic frameworks. We're aligning with the global goals on adaptation. We're increasing alignment with what other multilateral climate funds are doing, as well as some of the joint multilateral development bank work. But as well, building on experience from PPCR and kind of adjusting it to the needs of ARISE, we do want that central coordinating ministry, who's focal point for the investment plan, to really advise on, do you have adaptation national indicators already in place? Do you have an approach in place? Who's involved? And how can we directly integrate into that for ARISE so that it really is truly country-led in that process? And the last point related to this that I'd like to share for now is just on the private sector, because we do have quite a significant focus as well on how to incentivize investments to come in from the private sector, already challenge and adaptation, but then also to successfully monitor, track, understand results coming from that. So we have a substantial section, I would say, of this framework as well that is oriented more toward those private sector investments and looking at areas such as new market movers, innovation, private capital mobilization, along with some of the more traditional sector areas as well. Let me stop at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. In under 3 minutes, please speak in less than a minute for questions, which we can take up, and that is going to lead us to the wrap-up. Comments are so very much welcome as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Semambo Mohammed. I come from Uganda. I just have a question on the first presentation on issues regarding the expression of interest. Can you shed more light whether it is possible for the country to make an expression of interest looking at the 3 components, or is only specific to go for one component? That will help us. And if we are to do a one component, are there fund hiccups under each of these 3 components that I couldn't go beyond?
Okay, next question. We'll take all the 3 questions at once.
So mine is not a question, it's more of a contribution. My name's Arnold Nyenba from Zambia. I'm a private sector observer. My main observation is that when we are talking about resilience and adaptation, there's one segment of a group we are leaving behind, and that's the youth specifically. Because, for instance, in the case of Africa, 60% is a youth population. These are the young people building innovation. It'll be interesting to see if RISE there can be a portion and a part of having a percentage. As nationals are submitting these submissions, there should be a segment of a percentage going to youth innovations, because youths mostly are called to talk or present ideas, but there isn't a specific fund in these big programs. We're only seeing big firms and big governments accessing funds. So I think that's something we would like to see. I've tabled it out also to the observers to see that we can push for that with SIF. And it will be interesting because we meet both ends as youths in terms of the female and male. Thank you.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Abel Arenas de Perú. English? Okay. And I'm sorry for my English, I try to explain. My name is Abel Arenas, I'm from Peru, and ask about expression of interest. I okay. I need to know. I understand that if necessary, have an operation or credit for a multilateral bank when I present interest. I know if I need know. I know. If this operation or the credit operation, it have a especially plazo. El contrato de préstamo tiene que estar vigente en algún específico tiempo de ejecución o eso no es necesario. Sí,
Tiene que ser al inicio. Yeah. Can I just stop? Okay. I have Abel is asking if the loan contract has to be fixed or arranged at the beginning, at the middle, or at the end of the allocation of the funds, and the contract loan meaning through the MDBs.
Okay, thank you very much for the two questions which relate to the expression of interest and for the comment on innovation and the need to include the youth. Just a quick follow-up on that. So country context matters, country analytics, where are the priority areas of investment, how strategic should these resources be? So that should inform the countries as they respond to the expression of interest, and those that are successful, how they are going to structure this financing. On whether component one component or two components, or three, no, one or two, that's fine. Whether that determines how much resources that is going to be, whether that determines the allocation of the weighting, whether you put one or two, it doesn't affect you. What is going to affect is how clearly you've outlined the issues, because by the time you're reaching to the core areas, you've given us your analytics. So it has to be very chronologically connected, everything to what you're saying. So I hope I'm making sense in the way I'm responding to your question. Yeah. And to the last question, at this stage, we're not yet there to know the financing. And every year, the Climate Investment Fund does have the terms and conditions of financing, which it revises. So depending on which category your country is in, if you're going to be successful at the time of your investment plan approval, it will determine whether a tier 1 country or a tier 2 country which gets both grants and loans, or a tier 3 country which is all loans. But this changes every year, so it will be determined at that particular time for successful countries. Now, thank you so much to the panel, and we lost Argo because he had a very hard stop, but it's been very great. I'm not even able to summarize all that you've said this morning, and thank you so much to all of you, our great audience. I know we gave you a very little time to interact with us, but all of us are still continuously here. So what has clearly come out is that yes, there's still demand for climate adaptation and or resilience finance. And it's very clear that we have worked so much, all of us in the past years, have got systems built. We need to build on that. We have national adaptation plans, NDCs, and in some countries already investment plans. How do we use the Arise resources strategically to scale our investments and deepen our adaptation? We have support not only from the MDBs, but from like the Commonwealth for Climate Finance Hub to support us in very many different ways to be more clear in our articulation of what we need to do to sequence, to prioritize, and to also structure our financing. With that, I just want to say thank you so much, colleagues on the panel, and thank you so much to you, our audience. Have a good day.